to Workstyle Stories, because life changes and every life is different. In this episode, we're talking about how we have to adjust our understanding of what success means when our life changes. Change happens to us, and we need to evolve, and we can evolve our work style with that. To talk to me about that, I'm joined by the lovely Caroline. Hello. Welcome to Workstyle Stories.
Hello, Alex.
Nice to have you here. Before we get into talking about all that, would you mind just telling us who you are, where you are, and what you do?
My name's Caroline Barr. I live in southwest London, although as you can hear, I'm originally from South Africa. And my background is as a journalist and in television production as a production manager.
Ooh, so a journalist, so interesting to be on the other side of the questions today.
It feels very strange.
I also feel a bit of pressure actually to get this right. But
at least I'm a willing interviewee.
Yes, well, yeah, and I hopefully a very warm and easygoing host. Thank you so much for coming on to Workstyle Stories. Really appreciate it. So the type of work that you do, is that the sort of work you've always done?
Well, I actually started working as a journalist a little bit by mistake. I was doing work experience at a newspaper in Johannesburg, and because I'm 6 foot tall, they just took me for a postgrad. And I ended up working there for 4 years from the age of 18. So that was how I got my start. But when I moved to London, I headed more into TV production, writing scripts. And so what I've continued with now is pretty much along those lines. Either I'm writing and editing copy, or I'm managing video production.
Okay, great. So that world of production, TV production, what's it like? Because I've heard stories, but what's it really like in terms of the traditional working day?
It's pretty intense. I think it's I think the days of huge budgets and long lunches are long gone. So it tends to be, especially in documentary making, it's very full on, it's very fast paced. The hours tend to be, in my experience, very long, because it's really about getting something done by a certain deadline. It's a really creative and fun environment, and everybody sparks off each other. But my working days sometimes could be sort of 9 a.m. till midnight every day of the week, and then taking calls from 3 different countries over the course of the night because of the different time zones.
Yeah, and presumably, yeah, that has to be done freelance, right? You can never ask someone to do that under a traditional employment contract.
No, I mean, not often will you find permanent, especially in the smaller indies.
Yeah, so big chunks of work, fun and enjoyable, but time consuming, I guess, as at least. So presumably you can only do that for so long before you have to have a break, or you break yourself.
Exactly. No, I used to come off a 6-month production, and then get sort of a chest infection and a sinus infection and an ear infection, and my body would just kind of go, and we're stopping now. And it would take me a while to bounce back, and then I'd sort of go on to the next production and really push. So the concept of any kind of work-life balance was pretty non-existent. Okay.
So how's that evolved then? So from that time to where you are now, what's changed, and how have you changed your work style?
Well, I became a mother almost 11 years ago, and had every intention of going back to work. But childcare costs, particularly in London, are quite something. Really and I didn't have any family living nearby to try and help me out. And so it actually worked out that if I went back to work, it would cost our household money for me to go into the office. And because I was freelance, in those weeks where, for instance, I was between projects, I'd still be paying nursery fees, but not actually earning any money. So it just didn't make financial sense.
No, and it doesn't matter how much you love your work, really. I mean, I don't think any of us would pay to do it necessarily. So
That's counterintuitive.
So what happened then? So what did you decide to do?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mum for almost 10 years, really. I picked up quite a lot of fun projects doing copywriting and editing, either sometimes freelance work or for charities. And I've ramped up a bit with that more and more as my younger child has also gone to school. But yeah, it was predominantly being at home to do all the school runs and
those sorts of things you have to do when you've got children that don't fit with the type of work that you might otherwise have done in those large chunks and long days. So presumably having children change the shape and nature of the work you do then, as well as kind of the time you've got to do it with.
Yeah, I mean, I knew some very hardworking mothers working in TV production who'd have to leave at 5 to do the school run, and they'd be logged back on at 8 o'clock in the evening. And they were almost considered part-timers, because they left at 5, which was just, astonishing. So I've found a way to freelance and make things work around my kids. As we're talking about life changing, my life changed pretty dramatically towards the end of 2019. And so I'm now a single mum, and both my kids have neurodiversity, as we call it, which adds an additional challenge. School days don't always go to plan. I need to be available to go to school. I can't really send them to afternoon activities and things. So finding flexibility within that and being quite direct about needing that flexibility.
Yeah. So presumably you need work then that's very fluid around the unpredictability of that. And you've changed the type of work you do. So what's your work style like? How would you describe the way you work?
My work style, I think it starts right from applying for or accepting a role. I always want to take on something I know I can do to a high standard. And I think freelancers experience that. We have a certain expectation of what we're going to achieve and to what standard. So it's really, from the minute I take on the job, I'm clear in my own mind about whether it's going to work around what I can achieve. And then I mean, my kids' school days are 3 hours, so I get a lot done in 3 hours. But I've also, if it's a team call rather than a client call, if my 6-year-old comes and sits on my lap quietly, that's just kind of the reality. And it's pushing through the immediate sense of, oh, this isn't professional, and going, this is just how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of your situation now, has your definition of success changed in your mind? So the things that you sort of benchmark yourself against, have they evolved?
Absolutely. I think with the big sort of change in my life came a big change in circumstances. And, contrary to what might expect in a sort of downward shift in circumstances, financially, I'm in a very happy place in my life because I have the opportunity to do the work that I enjoy and make it work around me. And I've been fortunate to have my mother as a role model, because she went back to work after being at home with us when she was in her 40s and made a very successful career for herself by anyone's measure. But it taught me that your definition of a success can continually evolve. It doesn't have to be one thing. Just like our careers evolve these days, we don't stay in the same company necessarily for 30 years. We chop and change, and we transfer our skills, and then success does change. And I think as a society, our measure of success is changing as well.
Caroline, thank you so much indeed. Fascinating to hear your story. Thanks for sharing it. We've been Workstyle Stories, and we'll see you again. Bye for now.